Antediluvian Art Deco. My ultimate goal is to turn dead gods into a graphic novel. When I created my previous story, Tellurian, it was a passion project that I had been developing off and on for most of my life. I had a lot of time to try things out, to bounce ideas off each other, to let things stew. When it came time to start drawing page 1, I had decades of material to work with, which, as you can imagine, meant I could draw with a lot of confidence. During the visual development stage for Dead Gods, I have a number of smaller goals that I'd like to tackle to make sure that I can draw with the same level of confidence that I had working on Tellurian. One of those smaller goals is that I want to figure out a solid style guide for the inhabitants of this world. I've begun to explore what kinds of technologies they have access to, what kinds of dangers and obstacles they're trying to face. I know soon that costume is going to require a very deep dive. Over the past couple of videos, I've begun to scratch the surface of architecture. I want to lean on Art Deco as a major stylistic influence on the cultures of this world. This honestly started as a gut decision, just a very strong feeling. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there was a strong justification for it as well. Art Deco lines up perfectly with what I want to say about the Antediluvian period. It was a style born out of excellence, success, and hope. But since we're people, it also came with decadence, excess, and pride. It's the perfect visual language to describe a civilization that has reached the apex of its skill and ingenuity that doesn't want to think about how precarious its situation is. Designing Art Deco-inspired architecture really must be designed in tandem with sculpture, which is perfect because I want to use it to tell the visual story that the antediluvian world was actually highly advanced due to its expertise and the secret knowledge that had been given to them. Sculpture will be the perfect visual narrative tool to tell that story. Sculptures are a great opportunity for a culture to show off, and there are many things these cultures will have to show off, starting with this sauropod lantern. One of the most useful survival tools the people of this dangerous world have at their disposal is knowledge. The more you know about how the world works, the better you're able to navigate its perils. Here, they're using carved likenesses of sauropods to flaunt how much time they've had to safely observe these giants. The more accurately you can represent a thing, the more you show you understand it. They aren't just a flex, though. They serve a few other purposes. As discussed in previous videos, dragons and other hazardous creatures tend to give sauropods a wide berth, so they act as a passive deterrent. If hungry monsters aren't to be deterred, they can act as a short-term refuge, climb up on their backs, or, should the need arise, their necks, and hope that someone can come to your rescue in time. They also act as imposing and immovable border markers, letting people know they're about to enter a very well-established territory. Sculpture will also help to expand the world. They're a great opportunity to show or hint at things that may not otherwise be required in the narrative. In this case, I really wanted to draw a messenger riding a gallimimus. Art styles do more than just represent their subjects. They say something about their subjects. Another reason that Art Deco feels like the right style to lean on is that it excelled at describing harnessed power, drawing speed, or sculpting energy. For the gallimimus rider, the sculptor has tried to carve speed into stone. The overall shapes are elongated, the leanness of the creature is exaggerated, and the speed lines communicate the feel of these things blurring past you on the road. A glass eye for the mount and a glass dust visor for the rider finish it off. Art Deco was about power, energy, and optimism. Physical excellence was a key ingredient in that, showing off humanity at its peak. In the antediluvian world, some inhabitants have been pursuing physical excellence for centuries. Many would be worshipped for it. Statues made in tribute to them would be common. For this javelineer, my main goal was to preserve as much energy in the pose as I could. Some of my favorite Art Deco sculptures look like pent-up potential energy the second before it explodes into kinetic energy. The same goes for the archer, trying to preserve the major arcs through the form, simplifying the lines when they help to contribute to the overall movement of the pose. Theropod cavalry is a must. The best ideas are rarely original, and that rarely matters. Warriors riding on the backs of dinosaurs is just non-negotiable. I will happily admit that for many of these sculptures, I just took them as opportunities to draw things that I thought would be fun. That's how this should work though. Sometimes you just need an excuse to draw something cool. In the future, I'm guaranteed to swing back around to this idea and get far more specific about harnesses and mounted weaponry and all that great stuff. For now, I wanted to draw a spearman on the back of a dinosaur, with an eye towards simplification and flowing design. In this world, if you've mastered the ability to ride and fight on the back of theropods, you commission sculptures to make sure that everyone knows about it. As mentioned earlier, one of the things that I love about Art Deco is that sculpture and architecture are so often intertwined. Why just build a building when you can bring that building to life with figures? Pillars are an amazing opportunity to say something more visually interesting about the structures they're upholding. The first in this series is the classic shouldering a burden pose. Communicates strength while also reminding people just how heavy the expensive rooftop above them actually is. I also had to include the classic kneeling atlas pose. Sometimes you want to impress through strength, and sometimes you want to impress through elegance. Every location is going to have its own story and will therefore require its own unique sculptural language. This female figure stands contrapposto, contributing to a much more relaxed atmosphere than her atlas counterparts. In an effort to capture excellence of all kinds, this version is a dancer in motion. I could imagine a whole hallway lined with dancers in a wide variety of poses, like you had stepped into a colossal performance or a frozen ballroom. Sculptures will always communicate something, showing off knowledge, intimidating your enemies, celebrating strength. There's a great thematic opportunity to use sculptures to show off a mastery of the world itself. This 3-figure pillar may ultimately be a glorified lamppost, used to illuminate space. But by holding the flames in their bare hands, they imply a control over fire, symbolic of knowledge, energy, technology, take your pick. While none of these specific pillars may end up being used in the final story, the concept certainly will. They're a great reminder to myself for future architectural scenes. As always, it'll just come down to the needs of the story. In this world, the gods have addresses. They move among the people, or at least loom over them from their palaces and temples. But they can't be everywhere at once. It helps to remind people of the gods' presence and influence in their lives as often as possible. If the people can't bow before them, their images act as a decent second option. Idols remind people of the power they wield, or at least the power they claim to hold. This geometrical sculpture is meant to imply having power over the wind. Striking fear into people is a treasured and important pastime among the gods. But again, they're not omnipresent. A dreadful sculpture can ensure that people don't forget to be afraid of them while they're away on god business. This Nephilim statue holds a human victim, a vivid reminder of previous sacrifices, and a promise of more to come. Scale will play a big role here too. All the awe and intimidation that a colossal sculpture creates is transferred directly onto the gods themselves. I imagine that this one was carved directly into some local stones that happen to resemble a head and pointing hand already. Sculptures are commissioned by the wealthy and powerful, which means they offer a unique insight into the upper echelons of society. They say a lot about how their patrons want to be seen and how they see themselves. This is a world full of advanced cultures built on violence and tyranny, secrets, decadence, pride. The rulers of the Antediluvian kingdoms believe they now rule creation. Their images should display their arrogance, their lies, their cruelty. After drawing my way through these, I'm more convinced than ever that Antediluvian Art Deco sculpture will be a useful visual language to describe the empires at the very pinnacle of their hubris. I'll be able to use it to show the many ways people worship creation and ultimately worship themselves. Through sculpture, I'll be able to show that the gods offer people what they want most: safety, diversion, decadence, and all they ask for in return is everything. You can help this project. Click the buttons, leave a comment, go to my website, buy a book or a print, follow me on stuff, sign up on Patreon. Thank you all so much for the support you've already shown. It's been overwhelming. And a special thank you to my Dragon Tier patrons. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.